In the early days of personal computing, there was an invisible wall most people never questioned. Computers were powerful, but they were closed. You could use them, but you couldn't truly understand them. You could run software, but you couldn't change the rules underneath. Operating systems were guarded like secrets. Their code was locked away, controlled by corporations that decided what you were allowed to see, fix, or improve. For most users, that was normal. For most companies, that was profitable. But for a certain kind of mind, it was deeply frustrating. This is the story of how Linus Torvalds and Linux challenged the assumption that the most important software in the world had to be owned, hidden, and controlled, and how a quiet experiment by a curious student ended up reshaping the digital world. Long before Linux-powered servers, smartphones, and supercomputers, Linus Torvalds was a kid fascinated not by computers as products, but by computers as puzzles. Growing up in Finland, Linus was surrounded by books, ideas, and curiosity. His grandfather, a statistics professor, introduced him to a computer early on. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't user-friendly, it didn't try to impress, it simply waited for instructions. That was enough. Linus didn't see a machine that did things for him. He saw a system that could be understood. He learned programming not as a career move, but as a way to make the computer behave exactly how he wanted. When something didn't work, he didn't complain. He dug deeper. That habit, refusing to accept limits without understanding them, would quietly define everything that followed. Years later, as a university student, Linus encountered a problem that seemed trivial on the surface. He wanted a Unix-like operating system he could run on his personal computer. Unix was powerful, elegant, and respected, but it was expensive and restricted. Educational versions were limited. Commercial versions were locked behind licenses. To most people, this was just how things were. Linus found it annoying. At the time, another system called Minix existed. It was designed for teaching, not for real-world use. Its creator had clear boundaries about what it should and should not become. Linus appreciated it, but he kept running into walls. So he did something that, at first, had no ambition attached to it at all. He started writing his own operating system kernel. Not to change the world, not to compete with corporations. Just to learn, just to scratch an itch. Linus later described it plainly: "I'm doing a free operating system. Just a hobby." That sentence would age poorly in the best possible way. As Linus worked, he made a decision that went against everything the industry believed at the time. Instead of guarding his work, he shared it. He posted the code online. He invited feedback. He welcomed criticism. This wasn't a business strategy. It was instinct. Most software at the time was built in isolation. Teams were small, hierarchies were strict, and changes were slow. The idea that strangers on the internet could meaningfully collaborate on something as complex as an operating system felt naive. Some said it was impossible, others said it was irresponsible. Linus didn't argue. He kept coding. Something unexpected happened. People responded. Developers from around the world downloaded the code, tested it, broke it, fixed it, and sent improvements back. Bugs were exposed quickly. Features evolved organically. What started as a personal project became a shared one. This was not how software was supposed to be made. There was no central authority forcing direction, no deadlines, no marketing plan, just a growing community aligned by curiosity and usefulness. Linus didn't try to control it through ego or ownership. Instead, he focused on what mattered most to him: technical quality. He became the final gatekeeper not because he wanted power, but because someone had to say yes or no to changes. His leadership style was blunt, sometimes harsh, but always rooted in clarity. Code either worked or it didn't. Arguments were settled by results, not titles. Linux grew not because it was free, but because it was good, and because it was open. This openness challenged a core assumption of the tech world, that openness meant weakness. Companies believed that if you showed your code, competitors would steal it. Bugs would be exposed, control would be lost. Linux proved the opposite. With thousands of eyes on the code, problems were found faster. With contributors from different backgrounds, solutions improved. With no single company owning it, Linux became resilient. No one could kill it by shutting down a department or changing a strategy. It belonged to everyone and therefore, to no one. Still, skepticism remained. Critics argued that Linux would never be reliable enough for serious use. That businesses would never trust free software. That without a traditional business model, it couldn't survive. Then quietly, Linux started showing up where it mattered most: servers, data centers, research labs, places where performance, stability, and control mattered more than glossy interfaces. Engineers discovered that Linux could be customized endlessly, stripped down or built up, tuned precisely for the task at hand. It didn't force decisions, it offered possibilities. As the internet grew, Linux grew with it. When companies needed systems that could run nonstop, scale massively, and adapt quickly, Linux was ready, and Linus kept doing what he always did, focusing on the kernel, ignoring the noise. He famously avoided grand philosophical arguments about free software versus open source. For him, it wasn't about ideology. It was about practicality. Open development simply worked better. That mindset attracted companies, even those who once dismissed the idea. Businesses realized they could build on Linux without being locked into a single vendor. They could contribute improvements and benefit from others' work. Competition shifted from owning the foundation to innovating on top of it. This changed the industry. Suddenly, the most important software layer wasn't owned by a corporation, it was shared by the world. Linux became the backbone of the internet. It powered web servers, cloud infrastructure, and eventually, Android devices in billions of pockets. Most people use Linux every day without ever knowing it, and Linus, he stayed largely the same. He didn't become a motivational speaker. He didn't chase celebrity. He kept reviewing code, debating design decisions, and insisting on quality. He once joked that his motivation was simple: I want to have fun. That honesty is part of what makes the story powerful. Linux wasn't born from a desire to disrupt industries. It disrupted them because it refused to accept unnecessary limits. It trusted that if you give people the freedom to understand and improve something, they will surprise you. Looking back, the revolution Linux sparked wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with a launch event. It unfolded line by line, contribution by contribution, over years of quiet persistence. It proved that collaboration can outperform control, that transparency can create strength, that innovation doesn't always come from visionaries with grand speeches, but sometimes from someone solving a problem that personally annoys them. The story of Linus Torvalds and Linux still matters today because the world runs on systems we don't fully see. And the question remains the same as it was decades ago: who gets to shape the foundations of our technology? Linux answered that question with code. It showed that the future doesn't have to be owned to be powerful, that the best ideas don't need permission, and that when curiosity meets openness, even a small hobby project can end up supporting the digital world itself. That is the quiet power of thinking differently and letting others think with you.